on. The hell?
We go tell people we're live.
Yep.
So it's your birthday, huh?
It is now. For me, anyway.
Oh yeah, it's like almost midnight and shit over there, isn't it?
10 past.
Fantastic. Happy birthday, old man.
Thank you, thank you.
I'd get you something, but you have a $300 keyboard in front of you, so screw you, buddy.
Well, you know.
You get nothing!
Like I said on Twitter, all I want for my birthday is donations on the site. That's important to me.
Okay, I'm sure someone will donate something, kidney or whatever.
Kidney, children.
Can someone donate children to this man?
I've got enough, thanks.
It's bad. I've lived in both Alabama and Michigan, but I can only remember the stuff from Alabama because there's nothing good in Michigan except for the Red Wings. The Red Wings are it. The Tigers suck. The Lions suck. If they had Bears, they would suck too.
That's harsh, dude.
I'm sorry.
Funny, but harsh.
It's really bad. Like, they can't, they throw money at all their sports programs all over the place there, and they can't keep good people and have them continue to stay good for love or money. It is embarrassing for everyone involved. And that's about how much I keep up with sports, by the way. Yep.
I want the Olympics.
Wait, people care about the Olympics? Oh, wait,
I watched some of them.
Oh noes. We're interrupting his in-game time. Oh well, he can suck it up. Alright, good evening everyone. This is the Anjel Syndicate podcast number 007. It's Angel's birthday! Yay!
Ooh, yay me.
Alright, I am Matt Fleming. Some of you know me as Sans Pants on Twitter, and I handle the tabletop role-playing game stuff. And the man who's doing all the hosting and handling all the important stuff, Mr. David Anjel Syndicate, or Brathwaite, says, how the hell do you pronounce your goddamn name?
Just don't bother.
Okay.
Just don't bother.
La, 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 la.
This week on Anjel Syndicate, we're going to cover a couple of very startling issues that have happened on the industry. To start things off, though, yes, it's my birthday. Thank you, everybody, for wishing me happy birthday. It's lovely being a nice, ripe 34.
You're older than me.
The only thing older than me is, like, Pong. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Any old hell.
Yeah.
Yes.
News. I see we both actually have a nice-sized list.
We do. But we'll hit on the major topics first, which I'll let you take because I'll be right back. The one you have about Guild Wars 2.
Okay, I was about to say, dude, we have a fair number of things that are pretty fucking huge this week. Yeah, so Guild Wars 2, guys, it released. Yay! And everyone has been playing the hell out of it. Some interesting things have been going on in there, however, with some people finding certain ways to attempt to exploit various systems, and the thing that really kind of jumped out for me this week, the exploitation stuff is one thing, and I will certainly that would be worth arguing at another time. But I thought that the little name and shame session that the Guild Wars 2 community people had over on Reddit was worth its weight in gold. I will provide a link here momentarily. See if I can figure out how to do that. Control C. Control V. Well, whether you're playing it or not, this particular link is totally worth reading if you have played any MMO and have seen people with absolutely atrocious names or people that can't seem to not type the F word repeatedly. They open up a forum saying, hey, yeah, we're banning people for being total jerks in game. And of course people say, well, why am I banned? Here's my account name. And then they told them out in front of everyone. Honestly, it's kind of refreshing, but I can see why no one's really done it up until now. Simply because you require, at that point, you're kind of acknowledging people's bad behavior and, in a weird way, rewarding them for it by giving them, attention. Now, it's also, I'll admit, deep down in my soul, it's kind of nice to see some.
Okay.
And to have them actually told, hey, you're kind of a jerk online. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And I'd like to think that 72 hours is more than enough time for them to sit down and think, wow, maybe if I weren't such a dick, I could make the world a slightly better place. Even if it's a game, it was kind of refreshing to see. And I can why other companies haven't done that, simply because you have, I believe it would be considered libel since it's written down, especially in cases where it might not be necessarily cut and dry. But, for people that are incredibly obvious, which if you click on the link and start reading through some of the responses, you'll see that some people do not play well with others and they probably shouldn't be playing an online game.
That's true.
Yep. As to why they did it on Reddit, probably because a lot more people read Reddit than their own forums. The people that go to an online game forum is, I would say, between 2 and 10% of the people that actually play their game. Whereas people go to Reddit all the damn time. This is definitely a positive. It's a PR stunt for them, and I consider it positive. Will this stuff continue to hold out and bear fruit? Who the hell knows? God damn if everyone and their cousin isn't playing Guild Wars 2.
Everybody except me.
Well, I'm picking it up eventually. I have fun cash flow issues have stopped me from playing it. But it's interesting. I don't know how into it I'm going to be.
Yeah.
But, what can you do?
Well, I could jump into it. Tiffany's been bugging me too, but I don't have the time to invest in an MMO of any kind. Even one that's free outside of the box price, I'm very hesitant to jump into MMOs these days, aside from World of Tanks, because I can jump in and out of that as I feel like. But for ones that require a certain amount of time investment, I simply don't have the time. So that's what withholds me from playing it. That, and I don't know. Doesn't turn my crank anyway, but I'll probably check it out.
The problem with this is it's another fantasy game.
Yeah.
It's not like there aren't 50 MMOs that I can go and play. It's an action MMO, and that part's kind of nice, but with a little bit of polish, I don't see too many of the abilities be too different from, like, say, Secret World.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, I know that when Phantasy Star Online 2 comes out, I'm going to have to play that because, well, it's Phantasy Star. And Game Ego's Otherland looks interesting to me, but, it's because they're different and it's based on a world that I'm interested in. Well, worlds, plural for that one. So, but another fantasy MMO just doesn't, I could always just go play anything else that's fantasy, and sure, it'll be might be somewhat different, but overall it's just fantasy, action, hack/die. Yeah.
It's WildStar. I've got a few friends working over there now, and they had damn well better get me some friends and family action. I will start beating them. Their characters, because one of them is in my tabletop game I run online.
But as far as the Reddit thing goes, you're right about forums. The majority of people who are on the forums are generally minimal compared to the larger gamer base, but everybody and their dog looks at Reddit at some point in their internet life. So, if you want to expand your reach, you jump on Reddit. I mean, Christ. Obama did a AMA on there, yesterday? So,
I believe, and yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that right, not to sound like I'm grandstanding a little bit, but that right there is as big as JFK and Nixon went up on television for a live debate. No one has ever seen anything do that. And it's the first time. And I would really, really, really love to see how certain other candidates react when thrown up against the internet.
Yeah, that would be vastly amusing. Vastly amusing. Won't happen, but it'd be funny.
Dude, throw up some, have like your Canadian Premier or whatever the hell you guys have up there. Have him go up there and do a Reddit.
That would be, yeah. Harper on Reddit. That would be hilarious, but it would never happen. He is so anti-media, it's not even funny. He's been one of the worst for dealing with the media that we've had up here in quite a few years. But let's not get started on the political slant. We'll save that for another show, maybe. We'll do a special Anjel Syndicate politics live cast around the time of your November elections. That might be vaguely amusing.
Oh, God, everyone listening here, do not listen that day. Either way.
Fading in and out.
I blame the cat.
Okay, we'll blame the cat. You heard it here, he blames the cat. Alright, let's see, what else have we got on our list? I'm saving the top listing for later, because it's going to be a bigger issue. So let's jump on to something light and fluffy first, before we get into some more of the Truffle Shuffle news. The recently announced 17 Years of Command & Conquer Ultimate Edition. I want to talk about that for a minute, because it's, all through the Command & Conquer era, it's been one of my favorite PC titles and franchises up until the end. With Command & Conquer 4, Tiberian Twilight, that just, Not going to go there because I could rant all day. But they're putting in 17 games, plus some other bonus stuff, in one collection for, I think, $50. And that is really nice touch, and I think it's their last chance to squeeze money out of the franchise before they go free to play, which is a whole other argument.
Did they fix the games to work on Windows 7?
Yeah.
Like their ones? Because I bought their collection, like their 10th anniversary collection, 5 years ago or so, and I can't play any of the earlier games because I'm using Windows 7.
Yeah.
If fix that, then you know what? $50 is probably worthwhile to drop on that.
Well, here's the thing: we're on the cusp of not everybody, but people switching over to Windows 8. So is it going to work with 8 or not? Is the big question I have.
If you attempt to use 8, I will shun you publicly.
Oh, I didn't say I plan to use 8. I'm just saying people are going to start using 8, and I am wondering if they're going to have it supported by 8. I assume they will. It's a little too late in the game to suddenly go, oh, we're not going to support 8, because that would just shoot themselves right there. But
as long as they do something really stupid and say, oh, yeah, we're supporting only 8.
Yeah.
We're not going to support 7, because, that worked really well for, let's see, what was it, Halo, the Shadowrun game. I'm trying to think of, there were a bunch of other games that I just would not touch. Because I was running XP, and here comes Vista, and you know what? Screw that.
Yeah, Vista was horrible. So, but
once it comes out, it's going to be on every machine. But every new machine. That just means that I'm going to buy a new machine for a while. So screw that.
Well, I don't think anybody plans on buying. I know some people who have Windows 8 already. And without saying too much, they are seemingly impressed with it, but people were saying nice things about Vista originally in the small focus group that had it, so we'll see. But, yeah, the only problem I have with this huge Ultimate Collection is that it's too blatant. They made an announcement, 2-3 weeks ago, Gamescom, about it going free-to-play, and they're going to start taking all Command & Conquer games free-to-play. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, $50 and you can have the first 17 games, and some other toys. Yeah. It's like, if they had announced this first, and if it sold, I wonder what that would have done for their decision to take the next title free-to-play or not.
I imagine it wouldn't matter, simply because they had a group of people that needed to make something. They threw this at them, and then they're going to throw it up on the wall and see if it sticks.
That could very well be.
They're probably looking at End of Nations as a template to see, this company's making this, and hell, Rift did pretty good, so maybe there's money to be made there.
Yeah, well, our next topic kind of torpedoes that thinking to an extent, different genre, but the news about City of Heroes, which we'll go into now, since we're on the topic of free-to-play, with the studio shutting down and the game closing out, a free-to-play title that's closing out. This does not happen very often. I mean, it happens with certain Asian MMOs on a certain basis because they just milk their money and off they go. But, not for a title like this. I can't remember the last one of this size that closed.
Now, I had read somewhere that the people at NCSoft had said, "Hey, we're looking at converting all of our titles to a single engine." And there's a very good chance that the City of Heroes game wouldn't be able to do that. It is turning a good profit, but this is also the first time in a long time that NCSoft has ever been in the red.
Yeah.
And take a look at the quarterly reports, you'll see that, unfortunately, the City of Heroes games were doing worse than every other game they have available except for Guild Wars 1. It was doing worse than Lineage 2. It was doing worse than Ion.
Yeah, that pretty much does make sense. It's just,
they had to cut, that they had to get rid of something, so there you go. It would be interesting to see them sell it to a different company. I personally, if I were to run around and start poking people that I work with and say, hey, why don't we pick this up? Then I would be, it would definitely be City of Heroes. There's a couple of problems though. The first one is it is cheaper for them to just sit on it and not do anything with it, more than likely due to taxes. And the bigger point, if they were going, whoever takes it over is going to do it right. You need the original dev team. You can't, if you attempt to, just pick up someone else's code and run with it without anyone from the previous company, or even with one or two key people that might know some of the stuff going on, you stand a very good chance of boning yourself.
That's true. But on that note, they are shutting down the studio. Now, what that means for the teams from the studio, if they're going to be refolded or laid off, you can see a situation where at least a couple of key devs might be able to get acquired along with the game.
Certainly. I mean, at this point, if they're going to shutter everything, it would be whoever bought it would need to keep the people.
Yeah.
At this point, I haven't heard of any devs from there getting folded over into other opportunities in their company.
So.
But they do. I know some people there. They're wonderful people. Andy and I hang out every once in a while. Andy Belford. He is a totally awesome guy. One of their lead designers I play tabletop gaming with. And he is a freaking fantastic person, if a little nuts. As nuts as me. And it's really a damn shame. And it's because you look at something that's successful and they're like, holy shit, they shut that down. I think it's going to have a bit of a chilling effect. We've got Zynga falling all over itself. You've got, Sea of Heroes, which is considered a mainstay. It was the best superhero MMO out there, period.
Yeah.
And they're shutting it down. What this all really boils down to, and I've said this before, I will say it again, and I'll probably say it again next week and the week after. The second a company goes public, the clock starts ticking, and it's never going to end well. Yeah. Never.
I can agree with that completely.
And at that point, your goal is no longer to make a good game. Your goal is to make people happy.
Yeah.
Game. The people who want to see that little black bar keep rising. And if it ever flips over and oh shit, well suddenly we didn't make as much money. If it was an internal company or privately owned, okay, that's fine as long as the private investors understand. Which, if private investors are investing in a game company, they kind of know how games work. So, we didn't have as much black this time as last time, but hey, we're still profitable. So we're doing great. Then you move on. If suddenly you realize, oh shit, we're not making as much this quarter as we were last quarter, you have a bunch of angry investors saying, hey, where's my return, god damn it?
Yeah, well, this is it. And, it's just time. Because the market for game companies to be public, it's just not the right time. Because the investment's not there. Because there's not, among the large-scale amount of people who invest in the market, there's not an understanding of the industry. Not to a broad extent. Most people you'd ask, especially in the banking world, they're probably like, oh yeah, video games are fun, I buy them for my kids. They're not going to go, oh, this is red hot. We saw that with Facebook, for Christ's sake. Everybody was talking about Facebook, but as soon as it went public, it tanked. So what happens with web companies, I should say, and game industry, it's fundamentally the same. They reach a certain point, the bubble breaks, then they decide to go public, and then everything's downhill from there, and they end up getting fucked over.
Yep.
There's no polite way to say that. So it's sad news, and what happens next? Well, we'll see what happens next. I mean, it'd be nice if we hear about the staff getting picked up, but with so many closures right now that have been happening over the last couple of months, I think we're either going to see the rise of newer, bolder indie teams made up of these veterans, or hopefully they'll get picked up by somebody else looking to expand. But that's hard to say, because we're looking at, rumors of EA possibly being on sale. THQ is continuing to do its weird trying to survive thing. Nobody knows what's going on with Activision because of that.
I think is a little different, because upon further reading, They're looking for private investors now. They're looking to be fucking intelligent and get the hell out of this public investment bullshit. And for that, I give them kudos.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they can get out of that, then good on them. Until then, well, we're gonna have to deal with that. Speaking of EA, though, fucking Madden.
Yes.
You have so many other companies failing, so many other games that have brilliant ideas, but for whatever reason don't get enough traction. Apparently, the latest Madden is enjoying record sales.
Yeah.
What the
hell? Well, record sales in where? Continental U.S. or worldwide? I can't remember the numbers.
North American market, Madden NFL 13 sold 900,000 copies day one.
Yeah. Well, I have one theory, and I don't want to sound like an ass about it, but I'm going to. And that's, you've got an election coming up. You've got all the stream of noise about America going on. Nothing says America like football. So you're going to see football games and other, somewhat tied to patriotism items, whether they're games or not, are going to sell well between now and November. That's one theory. The second theory is because right now there's really not much to challenge the sales for Madden. We'll probably see similar sales for NHL 13 and FIFA 13. Because the only competition they really have right now is Guild Wars 2, which is not a mass appeal market item, and Borderlands 2, which is, again, not a mass appeal market item.
Yeah.
They're great games, but they're not, they're not games that everybody's going to buy.
I imagine
like Madden, NHL, FIFA,
Yeah, just people keep throwing money at them, which is, of course, why they keep making new iterations of Madden NFL.
Yeah.
They don't have to make a new game. They just have to make it, the current game a little better, change up the rosters to reflect current trends, and then go nuts.
Pretty much. And they rake in shitloads of money.
Yes. I have shitloads of money. So I can't really begrudge them too terribly much.
Well, that's it. And, I mean, look at, we've got Call of Duty Black Ops 2 coming out. We're already starting to get news about Battlefield 4. It's, they're going to keep pushing out games that sell really well. And great, fantastic titles that we ever hardly hear about just fall along the road because, well, they didn't make money. Or at least enough money to justify continuing them. That's the state of the industry among big publishers.
Yeah, that's the reason why I keep looking towards independent games to get my fun fix.
Yeah,
because at this particular point in time, making a game with next gen graphics is prohibitively expensive, and you can't. Once you start getting your costs up to that particular point, you can't afford to take risks because your money back, and that's stupid from a business perspective. And it annoys me as a gamer, but as someone who's peeked inside the industry, I totally understand what's happening, and it's unfortunately the way it is. That's why That's why you'll hear me talk about look, an indie bundle. Speaking of which, Indie Gala has a new bundle that I forgot to mention last week. IndieGala.com.
Okay.
They have a bunch of pretty fun games, and they are nearly all Steam or Desura compatible, which is important for those of us who like to get their games on Steam or that stuff. Right now, it looks like they have Indie Gala 8. They've got let's see, Dangerous Waters, Battle Mages, Sentinel 3. Sentinel 3 is kind of interesting, a nice little strategy game. Superstars V8 Racing, which is also fun. If you pay more than $7.77, you get a whole bunch of other games. Ghostmaster, Darkfall, a wonderful adventure game you should totally play. Octum Panzer, which is something that you should play.
Okay.
5, which is something everyone who likes strategy games should play. And Secret Gold, which, you can try.
All right. I'll have to definitely check that out. But, that's... Well, the thing is that we're not going to really... We have to go to indie games to see, innovation generally, until the big publishers finally get the point that maybe if they cut down on the budget some for certain things, they can expand other things, but they're not going to until the money starts drying up for these franchises that just keep pumping out. You've got your FIFA, NHL, Madden, WWE games with THQ, although, I'm not going to begrudge them for pumping out another WWE game because they need the money anyway. All these games that are probably have huge budgets that aren't specifically necessary, but that's the way it is. So, every time an indie game comes out and it reaches success, all I can do is cheer, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change anything. When you really think about it. You look at Minecraft and you look at Angry Birds, phenomenal successes, but they haven't changed anything in terms of how the industry is continuing this momentum of reiteration fever.
Yeah, let's bring up something a game that that doesn't have a lot of flash, does some things that are innovative. That would be Back Off the Line, which I believe you would have you already put your review out for that?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I hear nothing but good things about the game, but I hear that as a shooter, it's average.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Where Spec Ops shined, and this is, I said in the review, in which a lot of critics have all said the same thing, was that the story was really well done. It had an actual story. It had a strong narrative. And it was interesting. And there were some elements I didn't expect. And there were some very evocative moments that you just had to blink and go, what the fuck? Because you weren't quite expecting certain things. But as a shooter, as far as gameplay goes, it wasn't anything to jump up and down and scream to the heavens about. It was, run, gun, throw grenades, shoot, pick up guns, pick up ammo, shoot. But the game itself, both in terms of the game world and the environments and the narrative, were just absolutely amazing. So, when you look at the balance, this is one of those times where I didn't really care about the quality of the gameplay as far as a shooter goes. I wasn't expecting innovation in that to begin with. I mean, it'd be nice to have shooters do something different, but when you look at all the games that we do have for shooters, they're all fundamentally the same. But at least this one I wanted to keep playing because of the narrative and because of the game world that they presented. And that is a very strong inducement to ignore the quality of the shooting. I could survive that. I didn't care. It didn't bother me. I'm used to shooting X amount of enemies that's, rush at you from all different angles and, picking up all the weird and wonderful guns and, having a field day blowing things up. That's great and all. But that was just the avenue to go from one story scene to the next. And it was worth going through the average, slightly above average shooting to get to these amazing story scenes.
Unfortunately, the game didn't sell incredibly well.
No, because that's what people wanted to see, or what people look for shooters, is what's different about the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the thing they're checking. They don't care about the story. They want a great, fun shooter. So,
yeah. But that kind of leads into the point. People don't necessarily want... The mass market does not want innovation. Yeah. They want the same thing done a little differently.
Yeah.
And until that's why you have game like Spec Ops: The Line, which I need to pick it up. It's on my list of games to pick up and play because of the story. But I've heard people describe it as the apocalypse now of our current gaming setting, and I'm willing to believe a lot of the people that say that because I keep watching my Twitter feed, and I keep seeing people saying, "Holy shit! I just played through that, and that was fucking amazing." I feel terrible for what I did.
Yeah.
Talking about actual, real, visceral consequences and feeling guilt
Oh yeah.
over the things that happen in there. It takes a lot for a game to do that these days. And considering the number of games out there where you shoot various colored people all over the place, to have a story and a feel that actually brings shame and guilt and fear into your consciousness, that's freaking fantastic of them, and I really hope that other companies take a look at that and try and do something with it.
Well, this is it. To put it comparatively, I mean, the reason why I look at the game differently is simple for me to understand. It's because I'm an RPG guy. Most of the games I played over the last 20 years have been, Japanese RPGs and MMOs and RTS games, of course. Those are the main three titles that I play. Sims doesn't count. The paper doll thing is just a guilty pleasure, and that's an entirely different breed of game. But as far as other games go, it's RPGs, RTS, and MMOs. So I look for things differently. I've never been a huge shooter player. I'll play them sometimes when they're fun. I enjoyed Homefront, even though that was, it could have been a hell of a lot better. But as far as Spec Ops goes for its emotional impact, I haven't had that strong of a reaction to a game since Final Fantasy VII.
Ooh.
Right? I haven't, there's one particular scene, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't played it, but there's one particular scene that I welled up in tears. I'm not afraid to admit that. I was shocked. I felt the shame, the guilt, and I just was like, holy fucking shit. That's exactly what I said at the time that this scene took place. And I haven't had that strong of a reaction since Sephiroth descended from on high to run his sword through Eris, which, at that time was pretty impactful for games.
Spoiler alert.
This is really. Yeah. For all you people who haven't played Final Fantasy VII or heard about it, yeah. So, in terms of emotional impact, Spec Ops was even more impactful than that, which is a large thing to me. And it's a game that's definitely worth playing just to play through the story. And when you do play it and you get to those key sequences that I'm talking about, you'll know exactly which one I mean. And you'll be like, what the hell? And I'd love to hear from you when you do hit that scene, because trust me, if you react to it the same way I did, yeah, it just blows your fucking mind.
It is high on the list. It'll probably be one of the Christmas sale things, or put up there for if anyone wants to buy presents or something.
Yeah.
It'll be up there, but I'm definitely gonna pick it up by the end of the year. It's a definite must pick up. It's just I have money.
Oh yeah, understandable. Yeah. Well, there's probably going to be it'll definitely be on the Steam sale. The next big Steam sale, I expect to see it. Because this weekend, I think Darkness 2 is on sale for 75% off, and that only came out 6 months ago.
I'm twitching so bad. I want to pick it up, but on the other hand, I still need to play through the first one.
Yeah.
And money. Yeah, I'm trying to save up money on a incredibly personal note, guys. Next week, I'm going to be attempting to I'm going to go through the beginner's tutorial thing for driving a motorcycle. And then that, I will eventually finish getting my license for it, and then we'll actually have a secondary mode of transportation. It'll be awesome. Also, I'll do a 360 kill myself, and I'll be all over the news. Then everyone will love me.
Yeah, so you're saving up money for the medical bills. I get you.
Pretty much.
Right. Right.
Back
All
to
right.
stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah. I'm sorry, dude. We're gonna have to talk about Steam right now.
Go for it.
It's GreenLight this week. GreenLight is supposed to be a cute little place where developers will put up games that they've been working on, and people will vote to see if they get brought onto Steam. At this particular point, it is a cesspool of people putting up games that aren't theirs, games that are being incredibly misrepresented, and no one being able to find any goddamn thing because their searching system sucks nuggets.
Yeah. Well, who didn't expect that to happen? The only way you're going to get links to actual titles is when actual developers, the developers of the actual game, link it on social media. That's the only surefire way I've found so far, and even then, that's hit and miss.
Yeah,
They
it is
really need to do some hardcore filtering and vetting on that, which kind of removes the whole point of it in the first place. But
well, the biggest problem is that people are putting up shit that isn't theirs. And how the hell are you going to be able to verify that, this particular game idea was, is the person that put it up, or if it's someone else's and they're putting it up there for whatever the hell?
you need a layer of contact information for things to be confirmed properly. Would be my first guess on how to approach that.
It's at least a way for the game to say, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of bullshit, and then hopefully someone will be able to follow up on it on their end. But if how effective they expected it to be, because really you're opening up to everybody. Haven't you seen some of your players? Seen a fair number of the people that call themselves, "Oh, I'm a game designer. I coded 3 things in Visual C++ or something."
Yeah. Well, the other thing that would help is if they could publish a list, like an updated list, do it 10 chunks at a time of 10 titles that have been submitted, and have that information readily available. So people can go look through each 10, 20 list to see what's there, and then hopefully ding on what's not supposed to be there, and get the community to help support that, but that's probably unlikely too. So I think it's going to be a mess until they really figure out what the hell they're doing with it. Which is why I've stayed away from it, because I'm not going to, until they get things organized and straightened out and figure out what the hell they're doing, I'm just not going to waste my time. Because I don't want to end up voting on 15 not real games.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be nuts. It's going to be crazy. It's nice that they're doing it, though.
Well, yeah, it's a good idea in theory. It's just in practice, it's not working.
Well, the good news is maybe we'll get Project Zomboid up on Steam.
Yeah, well, I'd rather that than Pete's Penis Palace or something.
You know what? I would love to see this as an opportunity for some actual smut to get brought up on Steam, because people need their game porn fix. It'd be hilariously awesome to see some of those kind of games get brought up there.
Well, yeah, that would be. I'm surprised Steam hasn't put H games on there. They've got a way to do age verification. Why not put, hentai games on there and, date sims and things? I think they'd sell well.
I can see my friends list now playing, Super Tentacle Action 4. Send a message, so, dude, are your pants up? It's safe to talk right now.
Turn the webcam off. Turn the webcam off. Ah, my eyes. Yep, Steam meets chat roulette. All right.
Well, or worse, what if it's your mother?
God. Not go there. No.
Hey.
Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, but no.
Angel's mom, if you're listening to this and you need some ideas for porn games, let me know.
All right, moving on.
And now that I've schemed you out, looks. Might as well go ahead and hit up the thing you're wanting to bring up.
Well, only two things left on the list, and of course, this has had mixed feedback. We knew that the third part of Final Fantasy XIII was coming, and it's been confirmed. Final Fantasy XIII Part 3, Lightning Returns, has been announced for next year. The reaction on Twitter has been, and across social media of all kinds actually, has been rather mixed. Because I know people who are claiming they have Final Fantasy fatigue, and people who skipped the second part because of how crappy 13 was, which I'm not going to disagree with. 13 was just wrong. But 13.2 was so right in a lot of ways that, it's the way Final Fantasy has had a love-hate relationship. Like, I've had a love-hate relationship with it, and I know a lot of people who have been playing it since the beginning and have, imported or gotten fan-subtitled or fan-translated copies of the ones that didn't make it over here. And, it saddens me when a franchise that was so strong for so many years now announcing another title, even though it is a third part of a franchise which is new for Final Fantasy in and of itself. Final Fantasy 13-2 is the only second direct sequel we've seen, and we won't even talk about 10 Part 2 because that doesn't exist. Anyway, but seeing this reaction, this mixed reaction of people going, oh God, must they? And all this crying about Final Fantasy, whatever number it is, versus game that, I've looked at and I don't know why they're so excited about. It's sad when you see a franchise that was so strong for so many years just continue to fall in terms of popularity among people who absolutely adored it in the beginning. But maybe it's just me. I've stuck by it since, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I'm probably going to keep buying them because it's what I do. But 13.2 was a beautiful, beautiful game. I mean, it could have been better in certain ways because it did break some of the usual things we see from Final Fantasy, but it was the start of something, or the peak at something that could happen if Square Enix actually got on the ball and sort of went back to where they were with, I want to say 9, because 9 is kind of that pivotal moment where they were there but not there, and it was the turning point for things going horribly wrong. So, what 13 Part 3 brings is going to answer the question, I think, for me, in terms of, is Final Fantasy going to finally die or not?
Honestly, I haven't played any of the 13 games. The last Final Fantasy game I played was 11. If you count that. I did play 10 some. I did not beat it because, well, at this particular point in time, I'm too damn old to sit there and play 50, 60 hours of grinding stuff to kill things. But you know what? I mean, if they think that they've got some characters that have some lasting appeal and you can tell a good story with them, which is the reason why you should be playing a Final Fantasy game, go friggin' nuts. I see no reason why not. Haters are going to hate, especially when you have something that old and that established.
Well, this is it. It's not the haters that sadden me, because those are expected in any franchise. I mean, we both hate certain franchises ourselves. It's when longtime fans are just so disenchanted that it's just sad.
Yeah.
But, if you were to pick, I'm surprised you didn't beat 10 because 10 was incredibly short and easy, but that's a whole other subject.
I suck at games in general. I like running things, especially when it comes to Final Fantasy games. I have that terrible tendency to just play through the story until I get to the point where I get to a boss that completely wipes me repeatedly, and then I put it down for a while.
Yeah. Oh, I can certainly understand that. I've done. You have to play through it at least once until you get to the brick wall before you can really go back and start it over and really rock through it. That's normal for any JRPG, really. But skip 13 and just go to 13.2 because the 13.2 has characters from 13, but it's a different story, and you don't really need to know what happened in 13 to play Part 2.
Okay, yeah, they both have been on the list, but I've been on more of an MMO slash strategy slash computer shooty game kick. I've been coming back around because I've got Kingdoms of Amalur sitting right up there that I've got for the PS3 that I'm going to be playing. It's again, matter of time.
Oh yeah, I hear that. So the last item, because I'm not going to talk Final Fantasy to death, is the fantastic article by Lee Alexander about game journalism needing to grow up.
That lady has really curly hair.
Yes, she does. And, thinking about this, about her whole piece, and fundamentally she's right. Because, yeah, if you could say any one thing about game journalism, it's the fact that, there is... It's not a new thing overall, although it's a lot broader than it was 10, 20 years ago. But game journalists, some people won't consider them, a lot of folks out there, even on some of the bigger sites, don't consider themselves game journalists. They consider themselves bloggers, which, right or wrong, that's how it is. But the fact that game journalists do and usually seem to play into whatever the game companies are putting out for press releases and stuff, there's no investigation involved in a lot of things. It's, oh look, this is shiny, this is pretty. We do it on Anjel Syndicate, I'm not going to deny that, because, well, games are shiny and pretty. But game journalism itself can't grow up. Maybe it should in some regards, but there's two different kinds. There's game journalists who just want to show you everything that's going on with games and, show you the screenshots, the trailers, and, spread the information about these games as they get announced. And then there's the ones who are looking at the industry and talking about, studio closures and things like that. The problem is that game journalists, by and large, have no idea how exactly to go about doing it. Because on one hand, we're distributing news about upcoming games. On the other hand, we're basically game critics who are looking at games, reviewing them, and there's a disconnect between how we view a game as it's being announced before it's been released and how we look at it after. There's a large difference because we can be all excited about a title when it's first announced and we're looking at the screenshots and the trailers and we're going, oh, this is exciting, blah, 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 blah. And then we play the game and it's utter shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no cohesive form of journalism for games. And, now that I'm turning 34 and having grown up with games since I was, able to stand on a milk crate and touch the paddles of the arcade games and the pinball machines, through this and the way games have evolved, it really started to make me wonder, what does game journalism mean and what could we make it mean? And, that's something that's been floating around in my head since I've read this article. And I just thought it's interesting because what I'd like to do, and what I plan to do probably this week, is put up an editorial or maybe a community discussion and see what the readers think of in terms of what game journalists are and do, and how they, who aren't doing it, view it.
It is going to be interesting. I've been looking through the article while you've been talking, and Miss Alexander looks like she's foisting a fair bit of blame on the fact that we're getting lackluster games on. Saying that, well, game journalists are just lapping up everything they throw at them, and they're not sitting there questioning. Well, I don't think that looking at game journalists themselves is the problem here. It's their job to provide commentary, certainly, but they have to report on what's there. The games are there for a reason. It's because people keep buying them.
Mm-hmm.
It is the same reason that pornography is successful. Why? Because people buy it. Why? Well, because people like looking at naked people. And that's pretty awesome, Naked people are great. Hoorah. But if you're going to sit there and start casting judgment on why aren't we why isn't Roger Ebert yelling about the porn industry? I mean, those are movies. He does movies. There's only so much you can do about that. People want these kind of things. People want, the people over at Crystal Dynamics apparently think that people want to see Lara Croft as a younger girl going through traumatic stuff to become a stronger person. And you know what? There's probably a decent story that could be told there. Whether or not they actually do it right is entirely up in the air. The latest shooting games where you have the white people shooting everyone else. You know what? Resident Evil 5 sold like mad. Hell, I picked up a copy. I picked it up because I wanted to see what the hell happened to Wesker, but it's, you can't just sit there and say, how dare you make this terrible stuff. You have to look and say, wait a minute, maybe there's something deeper there because it's selling a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're going to start pointing fingers, maybe you should take a look at our sociological impact and see what the hell is really, why it's selling so well. And as a game designer, it's your job to say, well, wait a minute, is there any way we can take these things that people like to buy and turn them on their head? Like Spec Ops: The Line.
Yeah. Well, that's it. The problem with game journalism, or game journalists, as far as our relation with publishers and developers, and then our relationship with the game community and our readers, in order for, unless we were all independently wealthy and we could afford these things, a lot of sites have to moderate how they talk about certain games and how they review them. Because, a horrible review, and you could find yourself, in theory, being cut off from the supply of games from the publisher. That's one thing that people look that, certain people will talk about, most of them don't. And that's another reason why you can also see that hesitancy because of advertising. When you're advertising games, and one of the games you're advertising happens to suck, sometimes you're going to have reviewers who aren't going to give their full assessment because, well, they're worried about their advertising dollars. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not, something that happens on a large scale, and I certainly am not going to point at anybody specific because,
I'm pretty sure other people already have. I seem to remember multiple scandals. What was it, the Kane and Lynch game? When it came out, I believe IGN gave it a pretty sweet score, and the game was less than thrilling.
Yeah.
Yet, that's where all the advertising stuff was going. So, it looked like they were doing that. And I believe some people got fired over that. I remember what happened. A dude gave it a shitty score, and then he was let go.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And and you bring up some very valid points. When your lifeblood is, we bring all of the awesome news and we bring you the reviews first, you are totally at the whim of the people that are supplying the games.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, you're going to look at it and not give it the most critical eye or, try and downplay some of the elements that are going to suck. Because that's where you're getting your money.
Well, this is it. And, as far as I've ran things with Angel Syndicate over the last year, that has fortunately not been an issue. Because quite frankly, I'd rather have the staff and myself be honest about the game than worry about what the publisher thinks. Because it's nice when we get review product. I won't deny that. It certainly makes things a lot easier for us to have content and have the reviews that we do get. But at the same time, we don't need to cover every single game that comes out. And in fact, we don't, because we don't get review copies of everything. So unless the staff picks it up, then we're not going to cover it. It's that simple, because, well, we're small, we're not making revenue, so I can't afford to go out and buy every game that comes out. Nobody really can unless they're, swimming in money or, get a loan from Mitt Romney. But at the same time...
Like you did, buddy.
But at the same time, you do have to be careful about how you word certain things, because it's not so much how the publisher will react, but you also have to take in consideration how you explain things, especially with reviews. It's easy to say, oh, this game sucks because the 15th banana on the 14th tree was shaped the wrong way and actually looked like a potato. Right? You have to have valid points when you're being negative about a game, but at the same time, you have to have valid points when you're positive about something. So, you have to be able to be honest, and that's one thing I've always put forward with the staff, is that if something sucks, something's broken in a game, you can say so. I want you to say so, but the only attachment that I've ever given to that is that if something is broken, something's not working, explain why, or better still, make a suggestion on how it could be fixed. I don't want to see a review where somebody will say, oh, well, this, and this completely and utterly does not work, and then skip on to the color of somebody's bikini on the 15th level. We have to provide information as to why we think it doesn't work, or why it does. And, if there's a system, especially a key system that's broken, if the reviewer can think of a way to implement it better, go ahead and make the suggestion. Because at least then we're, not just saying, oh, this is shit and we hate it. We're looking at it from a more informative standpoint of maybe this would be better. Because it lets the readers know that, we're not just going to throw up a review that says everything's shit, don't bother buying it, and not explain why.
Well, that kind of ties into how reviews in general have taken a huge turn for the snarky. If you listen to some other people's podcasts, or some people doing video reviews, there are a couple of very influential people that some people could easily point out in the chat, that their job is to take games and just review them in the most snarky, narcissistic, negative attitude they can and play it up for laughs. That is not a brand new trend.
No.
It's something that's been happening, and it's something that we've all, as game journalists, I guess I consider myself one too, it's something that we all kind of have to worry about, because when you walk up and say, I'm a game journalist, well, the first thing I think is you're some monkey just banging away at a keyboard looking like a complete, talking completely out of your ass, not understanding things like nuance, not understanding how to explain yourself using the written word, and to make things both informative and entertaining for the reader without having to resort to creative ways of saying stuff sucks.
Yeah.
It's a lack of professionalism that a lot of people have. It's one thing to be snarky because I'm playing a character and I'm ragging on these games, but really I love them. It's another thing entirely when that's your sole revenue, and when you say you're trying to review new games. It's not all it does is bring heaps of negativity on the publisher and the people that enjoy that particular game. Because you know what? I still stand by the fact that Friday the 13th for the Nintendo is a fucking awesome game, and you guys can suck it.
Yeah, well, this is it. And, the other thing that I notice, especially with a lot of sites, is they'll, having good turnaround on a game is essential. You want to get your review content out there, and you want to get it out there before it gets too old, right? But the problem with that is that with certain games, especially in certain genres, the frequency at which these come out compared to how long the game is actually playable, you can't fully look at a game. Well, some games you can. You basically know what's going to happen, what's going on, and you can explain and review the game with a short amount of time spent in. But there are certain games that are incredibly long-winded that, have special things that crop up later in the game that if you don't play through it, you're not going to be able to write about it, and you may actually end up ignoring it. And that does no good either. That's why, I've had Darksiders 2 now for over 2 weeks. I'm getting ready to write up the review this weekend. And I could have written it up, a couple of days after having the game. But that game is long. Like, long. It's great, but it's long. And I wanted to be sure before I started covering it that I didn't miss something. I mean, there's not a whole lot that goes into it. Or games like Legends of Pegasus and Tropico 4, or, the new SimCity. There's a lot of intricacies that go into those games that you could miss on if you don't take the time to do them. So, I want our reviews to be, as fresh as they can be, but I want them to be I want the reviews to be comprehensive. And that means we take an extra week or two to really plow into the game and really check it out, then I'm all for that. And if that pisses off the publishers and the developers, I'm so sorry, but if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
And that's the most important part. If you're going to do it right. To bring up a certain example, Age of Conan. Beautiful, wonderful game for the first 20 levels. And that's honestly what a lot of reviews when the game first came out were noticing. They're like, holy crap, it's fully voiced, the story is fun, the combat, the combat mechanics are great. It's definitely a contender. And then they got to level 21 and they got out of the tutorial area and they realized that the rest of the game was totally unfinished. And a lot of that right there was something that a lot of people bring up as, hey, look, this is a failing of game journalism. They didn't go through and play the game entirely. And to be quite frank, they couldn't. You don't have enough time to sit there and play a game, especially an MMO of that nature, all the way to the end in a reasonable amount of time and be able to give a good, thorough look at it. You just can't. And a lot of Japanese RPGs or these strategy games that can take for fucking ever, you can't do that. So you have to go based on what's there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is a noted problem in our industry, and I mean, what the hell can you do about it? Other than tell people to sit down, shut up, we're going to get this done when we get it done, and it's going to be right. If you're going to buy it based off of what is said on the back of the box anyway, well, why the hell are you reading this? Go buy it. And then, you can feel validated or not when our review comes out. If you actually care about our review, you can wait a few days. Let's get you something right.
Yeah. Well, this is it, I mean, the only way to handle, especially with with MMOs that have a lot of content that comes with them, or even ones that have multiple classes, you're not going to be able to do a dependable review job of it in 3 or 4 days. Unless the leveling curve is so easy that a one-armed monkey could do it while eating ice cream. These games are going to take time to look at. And, if you want to put out content within a week of the game going live, then, all right, do it as a multi-part series. Here's the first X, level 1 to X. This is how far we've got. This is how things are to this point. Check back next, week for the second part where we've progressed further into the game. You could do it that way. But to sit down and go, oh, wait, this is how it is. We played it for a week. This is everything we found. Go buy it. I can't justify doing that unless the person reviewing it, or if it's myself, feels completely comfortable in saying, yes, I've experienced the majority of the features of the content as advertised with the launch state of this game. Because it's just doing a disservice to the readers.
Yep.
So, game journalism needs to grow up to an extent in that you need to find that space that works for how you deliver the content, whether it's the news or the reviews, in a way that does seem like you're actually going beyond the fanboyism of, oh my god, new game, I'm going to wet myself. And going, alright, this is what they're showing, this is what we've seen, it looks interesting, we'll see when we hear more. But at the same time, games and reviewing games and looking at games is completely subjective. So there's not really a mature way to not, like, you can't help but get excited about certain games compared to others. I don't care who you are. You know, you're going to be more excited about certain games than others, and it's going to come out in your writing.
Yeah.
So, you know, game journalism needs to be accepted for what it is, which is people who are passionate about the industry bringing out news from the industry to the general gaming public. You know, you're not going to find a Walter Cronkite or, you know, a Morrow in the game journalism. It's not going to happen.
Not yet. It could.
It could, but
at this particular point, we would need to have, for game journalism to get to the point where it's truly respected, it's going to have to go through all the same growing pains and all the challenges that traditional media went through. At this particular point, to say you're a game journalist, you just have to be a monkey that can beat your hands against a computer keyboard and put some screenshots up. For it to become a true art, for it to become something that's truly worth reading, we're going to, I do agree that with her that we're going to have to start analyzing stuff more seriously. Yeah. We're going to need to treat the media as seriously as we want it to be treated by everyone else. But as she and some other people that I've listened to have pointed out, we have a double standard for that kind of thing. We want games to be treated as serious art, but we're not willing to take up any of the responsibilities that entails. And the second it gets hard, we say, well, it's just a game. No, at that point, if you're trying to say it's art, it is no longer just a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have to we're going to have to suck it up and say, yeah, that's pretty shitty. And we're going to have to move on from there. I do, and I think some of this kind of ties into the current trend of trying to look at the video game industry as all the different isms that seem to be violated and complaining about how terrible they are and stuff like that. And I think that they're cheap shots at this point. I think that a lot of people are trying to take advantage of some of these things that have come to light for quick, cheap views. I think that's the only reason why some of this stuff has become such a big deal, is because people realize that there's a fire there, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get hits and make that money.
Yeah.
I think it's a damn shame, and I don't think that's really helping us.
No, it's definitely not. And the final point in this that I have is the game journalist label is, there are people who take it on, and, like you said, they're just monkeys who tap out a few lines, throw up some screenshots, and off they go, and that's it. And they're like, oh, I'm a good journalist, I posted a piece of news. And then there are the ones who are doing it on a serious level, but they're saying, but at the same time, they're like, oh, I'm not a game journalist. I'm, a blogger, or I just write about the games. It's game journalism as a title isn't taken seriously either. even by the people who are doing it. So it's no wonder that it's not respected, because it's not even the profession, for lack of a better word. I mean, very few people are actually getting paid for it. I know the hell I'm not, but but the people who are getting paid for it, and even the ones who do it for free, a large segment of them aren't respecting the profession of game journalism by calling it what it is, because it's got a double stigma to it. Some people view it as, oh, just some geek who sits around talking about video games on his little blog, and then there's people who are working for major media organizations at this point, which some of the sites are, with, millions of views every month. Those are large media organizations. But they don't want to accept the title, for whatever reason, of being a game journalist, because the title doesn't have meaning, and the only ones who can define that meaning are the ones who are doing it. And until more people start standing up and saying, this is what I am, this is what I do, and this is why, it's going to be one of those things that just becomes a half-assed joke in the industry.
Yeah, we're doing it to ourselves. This is the entire point of, if you think back in regular journalism, that's what they called yellow journalism back in the day, because it was printed on really shitty, cheap paper that yellowed after a little bit, and you could say whatever the hell you wanted, because you know what? You've got a printing press, so fuck it.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of growing pains that we're currently going through, and it's going to take us a while to finally sort the wheat from the chaff and have real game journalism become an accepted journalistic source. Yeah. Until then, well, we're stuck with people being total jerks and making all of us look bad.
Well, that's it. So that's for this year for Anjel Syndicate. That is part of the plan for development, is defining our our journalistic style take and defining what game journalism means to us. Fuck the rest of the world. This is how we're going to approach it, and hopefully people will like it, and hopefully, people will keep reading. But, we have to do that definition ourselves, and that's what we're going to do this year. Because I ain't getting any younger.
Yep. It all depends on how seriously you're taking all your stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I write for you guys is, well, A, I know who the hell you are. But more importantly, we take our shit kind of seriously. When I write a review, it's a pretty sweet review. It's one that I can say, okay, these are what my actual thoughts are. I mean, hell, you didn't care what the hell I wrote up there. As long as it was something reasonably legible and made sense, you had a fair bit of, I think that's a little too trusting because I added 3 butts in there that you weren't looking at. But now you're going to go read my review, aren't you?
No, I read it. I let it go.
The biggest the thing is, you're as good as your word out there right now, and unfortunately, there are so many people out there that you can't figure out who's good and who's not, with a few very rare exceptions. And even them, they're well known because they're popular. They're popular because they're well known, and it just feeds on itself forever, Ouroboros style.
Yeah, well, we're in the age of the internet celebrity, and in game journalism, we have our celebrities, unfortunately. And some of them are good, some of them not so much. But, that's just how it is. And, I let you guys, staff, have your freedom, and I read over everything you guys put in. And I'm checking it over. Tiffany and I both are checking over everything. And, I'm not going to, as long as you have put things... you took your writing seriously, which is the first thing. I mean, yes, whether it's 3 butts or you make a small clerical boo-boo or something just kind of right on the edge of being silly gets in there, you recognize that yourself. And I know that as you keep writing, you're only going to work these things out. I don't generally have to yell at anybody about what they're writing. I've only ever had to make one correction when it came to a score so far. And that's pretty damn good for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, as long as it's not something that's just thrown together, thrown on the wall, and sat up and go, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of myself." If you or anyone submitted to me a piece that was complete and utter shit, I'm gonna say so.
Yep, and you should. I mean, this is kind of your baby, but not nearly enough people do that. A lot of these organizations are ran by one or two people, and they are just there to, some people just do it for fun, and they're just jerking around, and that's all right. People write that kind of shit all the damn time.
Yeah.
It's the people that attempt to use that as any sort of leverage that make the rest of us look bad.
Yeah, well, this is it. And, I mean, you could go to the mainstream media, and, one of the things I do for fun is I'll go on, CNN or CBC, and I'll read through their news of the day, and the amount of mistakes and typos that I catch in those make me sad. Because when the mainstream media is making fun of us, as in the game media, and that you see this crap, it really makes me wonder what the state of journalism overall is. So I don't get quite that upset when people start talking about game journalism.
Been declining for a while. Yeah, ever since the advent of the internet, they've every news place has turned into this big churning 24-hour news conglomerate that is constantly trying to fight to make something to bring eyes and page views and sell all that sweet ad revenue that they've been losing elsewhere, especially those who have been completely destroyed in the print industry.
Yeah.
It's very sad. It's unfortunately just what's. It's because of the entire. Back in the day when we were younger, you had to worry about news at 6 and at 10.
Yeah.
Every day. That was when you got your news. If you didn't pick up a paper. Now I can log online right now and see a news story that's been posted 30 seconds ago. I guarantee you that the news thing that was posted 30 seconds ago is going to be a pile of drivel compared to the stuff that they were posting 20 years ago in newspapers, because there was enough time for gestation, there's enough time to actually go through and properly proofread stuff, there was enough time to have sources vetted.
Yeah.
That we don't have nowadays.
No, because everything happens too fast, and it's an on-demand world. So, that's why I just shake my head at the whole scheme of things. Journalism needs to redefine itself overall in this 24-hour world. Game journalism, regular media, doesn't matter. Anyway, I think I've beaten that one to death, and we'll probably hear about it later from people. Anything else you wanted to rock out?
Game stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think we will talk on this subject again. I think we'll bring it up another time and actually maybe dedicate a show to talking about the state of game journalism. I think that'd be interesting. And maybe I'll hook up some guests who can jump in and join us with it.
That'll be neat. I'd be down.
So, anything else you want to throw in there? Because we're at, over an hour now?
Oh, well over an hour. We've definitely overstayed our welcome here. I am completely tapped.
All right. Coming up this week, we'll have a bunch of reviews hitting since they're finally getting done, including my Darksiders 2 review, probably Legends of Pegasus, 2 new hardware reviews. One's going live this weekend, which will be the Aviator controller, flight stick, that came with Damage Inc. Pacific Squadron. And then next week we'll see my review of the Strike 7 gaming keyboard from Mad Cat, and a lot of other weird and wonderful stuff as we ramp up and start preparing for the insanity that's going to hit starting in October.
Oh God, October. Be broke forever.
I know, right? So I think that does it for us. Unless anybody in the chat has questions. But
I see people bitching about the ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2 variety of bans.
yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'd want to go into, but honestly, my throat is going out right now, so I'm probably not able to talk much longer. We'll discuss that next week if it's still an issue.
Yeah, I think we're good for tonight.
Yeah, it's okay, great. It's okay.
So yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll go on to the outro, and we'll see you next week.
Later.
A little bit more SimCity 4 music.
I would never have known if you didn't tell me.
Yeah, right.
No, dude, I bought the first one. That was it.
Oh, you suck.
What else do I need? Oh, look, I can go through. I can kill my guys, and that's adorable. I can put people in pools and let them drown.
No, not SimCity. City.
Oh, City. Oh,
SimCity.
I bought the third one.
SimCity 4 was beautiful.
I don't know. I don't know if I have the patience for that kind of gameplay anymore. If I'm going to play a game where I have to use strategy, I'm going to be looking for my 4X.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Anyway,
well, go look at Indie Gala. They've got Empires 5.
Yes, I'm going to check that out later. You'll probably hear it a little bit once I get the cast out. Anyway.